What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Week 10 NFL Summary episode. We didn't get a lot of good games, and in particular, the primetime games this week were just as bad as you can get. Broncos Raiders was not fun to watch on Thursday. Sunday night, Chargers Steelers, also not a lot of offense, not a lot of good football. And then last night was probably the worst of them all. Eagles Packers was supposed to be a good game, ended up not being a good game at all. So not a good week in terms of primetime games, but a lot of storylines to get to, a lot of other things to get to. We're going to do players of the week. We're going to do winners and losers, one sentence summaries, everything that we normally do. But before we get to that, the first thing I want to talk about is potentially one of the best teams in the AFC, and that's the New England Patriots. And we've spent a decent amount of time talking about not only the Patriots, but in particular their quarterback, Drake May. I don't know how much else I can say it. He is one of the best young quarterbacks. He's probably the best young quarterback in the league right now. Week in, week out, he is passing more and more tests. I think that's really the only thing that's holding me back from believing in him is we just haven't seen it for that long. And in particular, last year, as much as I liked him, as much as I thought going into this year he had a lot of promise, we needed to see it on the field. And we needed to see not only some, nice plays here and there, not only some traits that we liked. We needed to see him actually put together games and start to win some of these games. And not only has he started to win games, he's performed like one of the best quarterbacks in general in the league, not just best young quarterbacks. So we've talked plenty about him, but we do have to talk about this Patriots team as a whole, because now they're 8-2. They're tied with the Broncos and the Colts for the number one seed in the AFC. And in a week where Buffalo didn't look good, and we'll certainly talk about them later, the Patriots now have a legitimate shot to win the AFC West. They have, I still think, a legitimate shot to be the one seed in the AFC. And so that means we now have to go from, okay, the Patriots, nice story, Drake May, a ton of potential. This Patriots team is going to be, really good in the future, to now this Patriots team might be really good now. And we might have to start moving up our timeline of the Patriots might actually be contenders right now. And I know there are Patriots fans and there are other people out there that are saying, well, of course they're contenders. They're 8-2. They are week in and week out one of the best teams and most complete teams probably this year. They have a great quarterback. They have an MVP candidate at quarterback. And then you combine that with a much improved defense, with a much improved coaching staff. And this Patriots team should be considered legitimate contenders. As I mentioned, it's not just Drake May. It's this defense that a year ago was okay. And I think under Gerard Mayo was probably the strength of the Patriots the last couple of years, but never really was a top 10 unit, was never really a unit that you were truly scared of. And now they're sixth in points per game. They're the best rushing defense right now, at least by yardage, only giving up 79 per game. And last year, they were 22nd in points per game. They were 23rd against the run. And that, I think, shows the impact of a Mike Vrabel. Bringing in an established coach, someone that can kind of revamp this defense, combined with the fact that you have a great young quarterback, that's what makes this Patriots team really good. And makes them not only a team to worry about in the future, but a team to worry about right now. Now, the only thing to be hesitant about is what I mentioned earlier. And it's just the fact of this is a young team, a young quarterback, is do they have enough experience? And when it really matters, can they beat the best teams? And I don't think we're really going to know that until the playoffs. If you look at the rest of their schedule, they have a late bye. They have a bye in week 14. The next three games before their bye, Jets, Bengals, and Giants. You could make the case as long as they don't get into a shootout with the Bengals. They're probably going to be 3-0 in those stretch before their bye. So they're going to be 11-2 going into the bye. And then they play the Bills, the Ravens, the Jets, and the Dolphins. And who knows where the Bills and Ravens will be at that point. But it feels like the floor for the Patriots, if you think they're an actual good team, is at least 13-4. You could make the case maybe the Bills beat them, maybe the Ravens beat them, but the rest of the games they should win if they are a good team. And so you figure the floor is 13-4, and that probably gets them the one seed. Maybe the two seed, depending on how the Colts finish the year. I don't really believe in the Broncos. I don't think they're going to be the one seed. So they're probably going to get a 1 or a 2 seed. They're going to have home field advantage for a large part of the playoffs. then the questions are going to come. It's great to beat the Bills in the regular season. It was a big milestone for Drake May, for the Patriots. But can you beat the Bills come playoff times? Can you beat the Ravens come playoff time? I know they're technically, I don't think, in the playoffs right now, but can you beat the Chiefs come playoff time? That's going to be the big test for the Patriots. And so, are they a legitimate contender? I think they are. And I don't think this is a team just waiting for the future. They are a good team right now. It's not just Drake May, it's the whole team. But we have seen lots of examples of this in recent history where you have a really good team in the playoffs. You might have a young team in the playoffs, and they're just not quite ready to take the next step. And I think if I had to bet, not just from the regular season, but for the rest of the season, I'm leaning towards that being the case. That this is a really good team. They have a chance to make a big run in the playoffs, but I think they might be just a little bit early. And we've seen that in lots of cases. That doesn't mean they can't win the Super Bowl. I think they have a shot. But if I had to guess, they're probably just going to get a lot of good experience and be ready for, next year, the year after that. But that doesn't mean they aren't legitimate contenders. And I think they are. They are right now probably playing the best in the AFC outside of the Colts. And you have to take them seriously. I don't think we can just move on to say I don't think we can just say, yeah, this team will be good in the future, but not right now. They are a legitimate team, and we have to treat them as such. Speaking of legitimate teams and treating them as such, let's go over to the NFC and talk about probably the two best teams in the NFC. And really right now, the only other team that has a case is maybe the Detroit Lions. Eagles and Packers, they both showed that I don't know if they're ready right now to be the best team, although the Eagles, I think, will be there when it matters. But right now, the two best teams, not only the two best teams that are playing the best, but I think the two best teams, when it all comes said and done, will be the Seahawks and the Rams. And right now, they are first and second in DVOA. Seahawks are first, Rams are second. They have both just been blowing out teams recently. And they right now look like not only the best teams in the NFC, you can make the case they are the two best teams in the NFL. And it's kind of good and bad that they play in the same division. Only one of these teams is going to win their division. Only one of these teams is going to have home field advantage, at least to start the playoffs. But the good part of it is we're going to get two really good games where they face off in the division. First one is this coming week, week 11. They play definitely the game of the week for me. Eagles Lions is another good game in the NFC. But Seahawks Rams, as I mentioned, are playing the best football right now. The Rams took care of business against a still feisty 49ers team, and the 49ers still have an outside shot to win the division as well. But with their injuries, I don't think they're just quite on the same level as these two teams. And the Rams, in particular, offense is just firing on all cylinders. It seems like forever ago that we were concerned that maybe Matthew Stafford, maybe his age would become a factor, maybe his back injury that a lot of people were talking about, a lot of people didn't know a lot about in the preseason and in training camp. There were concerns about this Rams team, but those seem like long ago because Stafford is an MVP candidate. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. Puka Nacua, one of the best receivers. Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers this year. They are really hard to stop. They put up a lot of points against this 49ers team. Stafford is just throwing the ball everywhere. He can't move, so if you can get him off his spot, that's probably how you beat this team. But if you don't get enough pressure on him and he can just dice you from the pocket, they are probably the best offense right now. And that, I think, overshadows how good this defense has been as well, because it's not just the team that is just getting at shootouts every time. This Rams defense is still good, but they are led by this offense, and they're led by Matthew Stafford. The only concern I have is they've blown a lot of teams out recently, which is great. You can only play who's on your schedule. But it's been a while since they've had a signature win. And it's been a while since they beat like an actual good team. The last two teams they've played after their bye, the Saints and the 49ers. Saints, one of the worst teams. 49ers, good team, but also just probably overmanned with all the injuries they've had. Before their bye, they played the Jaguars. I don't think they're a good team. And then the Ravens, back when the Ravens didn't have anybody. So it's been a while since the Rams have played a good team. And so I think that's going to be a good test against the Seahawks. Can they continue this dominance against a really good team? And then if we look at the Seahawks, it's kind of the same thing. They have a great offense. Sam Darnold playing like an MVP candidate. I think their defense is probably better than the Rams. They showed that in the blowout this week against the Cardinals. 2 defensive touchdowns for DeMarcus Lawrence on essentially the same play. Looked like just an exact replay. This defense is legit. It's got playmakers on all 3 levels. They're missing players on defense, and it seems like every week the Seahawks have missed a couple key guys, and yet for the most part, they've been dominant all year. A couple weeks they struggled when the injuries just got too much, but overall, I think the Seahawks have the slight edge on defense. This offense, I would have a little bit less confidence than the Rams. I would say the Rams have the slight edge on offense. That doesn't take away from what Sam Darnold is doing, doesn't take away from what Jackson Smith and Jigba is doing. But if I have concerns about the Seahawks, it's can this offense really move the ball against elite defenses? And similar to what I said in the Rams, the Seahawks have blown out teams recently. And as I said, you can only beat and play who's on your schedule. But can they do it when they play a really good team? Because the last couple weeks, they blew out the Cardinals and Commanders. 2 average teams, but not great teams by any stretch. And then before their bye, they beat the Texans and the Jaguars. Again, 2 decent teams, but no great teams. And so I think this is the case where the Rams and Seahawks are both great teams. I don't want to take that away from them. But it's also been a minute since we've seen them go up against another great team. And so that's what makes this Week 11 showdown really interesting, is all the great things that we've seen between these 2 teams, the dominant efforts on both sides of the ball. Can they do that against another elite team? Can the Seahawks defense, that looks great, can they stop a great Matthew Stafford-led offense? And then vice versa. This Rams defense has looked good throughout the year. Can they stop Sam Darnold? Can Sam Darnold play well against a good defense? There's a lot of fun storylines, and it's one of those things. I don't want to overreact to one game. We're certainly going to talk about it next week after they play. If one of these teams wins, I'm not going to just blanketly say they're the best team. It's a regular season game. We know that these teams are going to really matter come playoff time, but it's going to be a really good test to see probably who the best team is right now in the NFC. Whether or not that changes, we'll see. But they're playing like the 2 best teams. We're going to get a great game come this week that we'll certainly talk about next week. So we'll leave it at that. Plenty more NFC West stuff to come. But let's stay on Week 10 for a second. Let's continue with my 1-sentence summaries as I do every week. Starting with Thursday Night Football, Raiders at Broncos. Broncos offense falls to the Raiders level, while defense leads them to top record in the AFC. Falcons at Colts. Jonathan Taylor runs all over the Falcons as he continues to make his case for MVP. Giants at Bears. Caleb Williams starting to put it all together under Ben Johnson, while Giants lose both Jackson Dart and Brian Daboll. Bills at Dolphins. Bills fall flat as Dolphins win for the first time in 3 years in what might be the upset of the year. Ravens at Vikings. Ravens continue their surge as McCarthy and the Vikings offense fall back down to earth. Browns at Jets. Jets special teams step up as offenses refuse to move the ball consistently. Patriots at Bucks. Drake May outdoes Baker Mayfield as Travion Henderson provides the knockout punch. Saints at Panthers. Tyler Shuck provides spark to Saints offense, while Panthers continue to be one of the more confusing teams. Jaguars at Texans. Texans make historic comeback behind Davis Mills as Lawrence and the Jags fall back into mediocrity. Cardinals at Seahawks. Seahawks jump on Cardinals early behind dominant defensive performance. Rams at 49ers. Stafford continues to look like an MVP candidate against undermanned 49ers. Lions at Commanders. Lions offense looks rejuvenated under Dan Campbell's play calling. Steelers at Chargers. Rodgers looks his age as Chargers limp to a victory. And then finally, the Monday night game, Eagles at Packers. Both offenses refuse to look competent, but Eagles continue to pull out wins as the Packers continue to fall. So those were my 1-sentence summaries from every game this week. Let's get into my winners and losers. I mentioned them in the summary. My first winner is probably Travion Henderson, the running back for the Patriots. It's been a really up and down, I would say, 6 months for Travion Henderson. Looked really good at Ohio State. Obviously, he won the title with them. Him and Quinshon Judkins, great duo. They were both picked in the second round. It looked like for a couple months there that Judkins, all of his off the field issues, Henderson, all the hype that he was getting, it looked like he was going to be one of the best young, rookie running backs. He was getting compared to Jahmyr Gibbs, all of that. But then the season actually started and Henderson just wasn't on the field. And the few times he was on the field, he just didn't look that explosive. He was struggling in pass protection. And then on the other side, Quinshon Judkins came in without really knowing a lot of the Browns offense to start, and he looked good right away. So it was kind of a slow start for Henderson. But now that the Patriots have lost Antonio Gibson, who went out for the year a few weeks ago, Ramondre Stevenson has missed the last couple weeks, Henderson was forced into as a starter, and this was the first week where you could actually see the elite running back that a lot of people saw at Ohio State. He is very explosive, he's very fast, and we saw it twice this week against the Bucs. 2 big, long touchdown runs. The last one ended up sealing it. I still have questions if he's going to be just a pure 3-down running back, somebody that can, get 25, 30 carries. But he did show, and he showed this today, that he has the ability to take it for a touchdown at any point. And there's not a lot of running backs that can do that like him. So I was excited to see him finally show that in the NFL. We'll see if that continues, but at least for right now and for this week, he's a winner. My 2 other winners are both coaches. And the first one is Aaron Glenn. Jets have now won back-to-back weeks. I'm not going to pretend like the Jets are this up-and-coming team, that they're going to make noise the rest of the season. But I do want to shout out Aaron Glenn because 2 weeks ago, Jets hadn't got a win. The roster was a mess. They've now since even traded more guys. And through potentially no fault of Aaron Glenn's, it looked like he might just get fired after 1 year. And I say that's not necessarily his fault because I don't think a lot of how the Jets are performing is Aaron Glenn's fault. I do think he has a chance to be a good coach in this league. And now, 2 weeks later, 2 not so pretty wins. Again, not saying the Jets are a great team, but 2 wins on the board. And to me, that makes Aaron Glenn a winner. I think he is showing what he can be as a coach. He doesn't have a good roster, certainly doesn't have a good quarterback. And big picture for the Jets, it's probably better for them to lose, make sure they can get a top draft pick. But for Aaron Glenn, this is a good sign. And I've liked what I've seen in the bits and pieces so far the last couple weeks, that I think the Jets might have their coach. They need to get him a better roster, but for right now, he looks like he has what it takes. And so Aaron Glenn to me is one winner. And then the other coach is Dan Campbell. A lot was made this week that he took over the play calling, and he took over the play calling because the Lions offense, while still good and has still had moments without Ben Johnson, it hasn't been as consistent. And Dan Campbell recognized that. He recognized last week against the Vikings when offense had one of the worst performances. Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't as involved. Jameson Williams hasn't been involved. And so he said, hey, let me take over the play calling. And through 1 week, it looks like he made the right decision. It was against the Commanders, who don't have a good defense. And so I'm not saying that Dan Campbell's just going to solve the Lions, that he's going to fix all their problems. But through 1 week, it looks to be a successful change. We'll obviously see how that continues throughout the season, but through 1 week, Dan Campbell is a winner. My 3 losers, first, we got to just say the Packers offense. You could say it's Jordan Love. You could say it's Matt LaFleur. I'm going to just lump the Packers offense into one, not just for this week, although we're going to just talk about this week, but it's really been the last month that this offense that has pieces just can't get going at all. And you could blame, again, either Jordan Love or Matt LaFleur. It's probably some combination. This week was just yet another performance that Packers fans probably wish they didn't see. Everyone else, including myself, wish I didn't see that game. The defense, I think, is okay. And realistically, the defense is good. It's this offense that just week in, week out, just has slow starts. And yes, they can kind of get things going in the second half, but I've seen this year in and year out. There's always a team that has good pieces. They just can't figure it out. And usually the sign of a struggling offense is they struggle for a lot of the game. They kind of pick it up towards the end, think that something's changed, and then the next week it's just the same exact thing. And that to me is the Packers right now. They can't get anything going in the first half. Jordan Love and the offense gets a little bit going once they start going a little bit more up tempo, once they just frankly have their backs against the wall. And then you think, okay, things are going to change next week, and yet they aren't. And so to me, right now, the Packers just aren't a contender, or at least Super Bowl contender. Yes, they will probably be there when it matters. Yes, I still think they make the playoffs. But until this offense can change it all, I can't really take this Packers team seriously. So they are a big loser for me this week. Another big loser for me is Trevor Lawrence. I have been out on Trevor Lawrence for a little bit. I was one of those people that didn't really have much confidence that Liam Cohen was going to fix him this year. I don't want to say he's one of the worst quarterbacks. There have been definitely some bad quarterback play this year. Trevor Lawrence to me is just right above that. He's not the worst quarterback, and he has stretches and he has moments where he's a competent quarterback. But when you essentially see the same thing week in and week out, you can blame the fact he doesn't have weapons. You can blame the fact that he's changed head coaches, changed play callers almost every year. At some point, we have to point to Trevor Lawrence. And we might even be seeing the last year of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I know there's contract stuff. I know it's not necessarily easy to move on from him. But the way that Liam Cohen has looked at Trevor Lawrence sometimes this year, it kind of looks like the way that I've looked at him and others have looked at him just through the TV. He's just not a good NFL quarterback right now. He's not a terrible one, but he's just not a good one. And he's someone that if this was year 2, if this was, Caleb Williams that we're talking about in his second year, I would be okay with him. Be like, okay, I see some moments. He struggles at times, but I see the vision. Trevor Lawrence now in year 5, it's just the same thing. It's been the same thing for 5 years. If I'm Jacksonville, I want to move on. I know you won't get really anything for him. It's going to be tough to move on. But week in and week out, it's the same thing. It was the same thing this week. Collapsed by the Jaguars. Again, not all his fault. But then he gets the ball back, legitimately has the chance to get in field goal range. Cam Little's field goal range is probably 2/3 of the field. And yet he falls up just short. And not only does he fall up just short, he ends it with about as embarrassing way as you can. Fumbles the ball, Texans get a touchdown. He is kind of the same he has been. And so to me, loser of the week, I'm just done with Trevor Lawrence at this point. Speaking of quarterbacks that I'm just done with, Aaron Rodgers is my other loser. I think as much as I don't necessarily want to praise Rodgers at times, I do think he's been okay for the Steelers. And especially when you consider he's in his 40s, he's still a good quarterback. And he is a quarterback that when you watch certain plays and when you watch certain games, you can see why Rodgers has been one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And you can see why he might be just the most talented quarterback of all time. He can still make those throws. But I also think that it's part of the reason why the Steelers team some weeks looks really good and some weeks just doesn't look good. And I think some of that is Rodgers. I don't want to put all the blame on him because he's a 40-year-old quarterback. Blame should be put elsewhere. But this week in particular, I think was his worst week. He was missing throws he normally makes. This offense that normally has at least a little bit of an identity just couldn't move the ball really at all. And the Chargers defense is good. They deserve credit, but not a good week for Rodgers. He looked his age this week. I don't think that will continue. I do think there will be games where he looks good, but then there are going to be games like this where he doesn't. So he's one of my losers of the week. And then to wrap up, let's go through my weekly awards. My MVP of the week is going to be Matthew Stafford. I mentioned he could have been MVP last week. I gave it to Sam Darnold. I think Stafford, you can make the case as the MVP of the season. I know a lot of people are going to say Jonathan Taylor. That's a good answer. But if we're talking quarterbacks, it's probably Stafford or Drake May. And we've talked a lot about Drake May. A lot of fun to watch. Really young, really enticing. Matthew Stafford, as I mentioned at the top, he can't really move, but he just balls out. And he is just ripping the ball over the field. He's one of the best just pure arm talent passers we've seen, probably in NFL history. And he is in a great spot right now. Between him and Sean McVay, Puka, Devontae Adams, they are really hard to stop. And Matthew Stafford is just firing on all cylinders. He's my MVP of the week. My surprise player of the week is Davis Mills, who authored this just great comeback against the Jaguars. And I know he came in as a sub last week. CJ Stroud went out, so he didn't get the chance to practice, but he didn't really look that good. And this Texans offense that just hasn't looked good really all year, even with CJ Stroud, I didn't think there was any hope for the Texans. I didn't think the Jaguars were a great team either, so I didn't expect them to just get blown out. But I didn't think this offense would be able to move the ball a lot, and they did. Took them a little bit, but for the most part, this offense looked pretty good. He got the ball to Nico Collins. He was able to spread it around to some of the rookies, to Dalton Schultz. Both the running backs looked pretty good. And so I'm not saying that this is, maybe his team. Obviously, CJ Stroud will come back at some point. But a nice performance by Davis Mills. I was certainly surprised. And then my disappointment is another quarterback, and that's Bo Nix. I almost didn't put him in this category because I've never been the biggest Bo Nix fan, so can't really be disappointed if I didn't have that much expectation to begin with. But I thought this might be the week where he starts to play a little bit better, plays a not-so-good Raiders defense. I thought this was a time for Bo Nix and this Broncos offense to kind of figure some things out, because it's been a few weeks since we've seen them play, good on that side of the ball and good for a full game, not just one quarter. And yet it was a mess. And so much so that I don't know if I can take the Broncos seriously. I know they're 8-2. I know they're tied for first. But with the offense looking like this, with Bo Nix playing like this, I don't really trust it come playoff time. I don't care how good the Broncos defense is. So Bo Nix was a disappointment this week. Best team is the Seahawks. Just a second straight week of just dominating a team. It was 28-0, really before you could blink. They went up 35-0 in the first half. It did finish 44-22, I believe. The second half wasn't great from the Seahawks. They had some turnovers. Darnold in particular had a couple moments where you're like, is this old Sam Darnold? But for the most part, Darnold and the offense looked great. This defense was suffocating. And I already talked about them. They are first in DVOA and one of the best teams in the league. Certainly best team of the week this week. My surprise team, I'm going to say the New Orleans Saints. And I didn't put Tyler Shuck as a winner, but he would probably be my fourth choice. He looked okay. And again, you have to factor in the team and the defense that they're playing. Panthers defense, not the greatest, although they have shown some better signs recently. And Tyler Shuck, I thought looked like an okay quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and say he looked great. I'm not saying he's one of the best young quarterbacks now. But I saw enough signs where I'm at least now open to the idea that the Saints can continue on with him. And that really should be the case because he was just a second-round pick this past year. But I wasn't really expecting much. And the Saints and Shuck looked pretty good. So, surprise team to me. I want to see them play a better team, but I liked what I saw. And then to wrap up my disappointing team, we have to talk about the Buffalo Bills. This, yes, was one of the worst games you'll probably see. Probably one of the worst games from Josh Allen. Not based on how he played or his stat line. I think his stats ended up decent. I don't think he played terribly. But when you factor in who they were playing and you factor in team performance, this was one of the worst games and probably the worst game in the Josh Allen era. You could say it's 1 week, and I'm not going to sit here and just rain on the Buffalo Bills and say they are done, they're a terrible team. But I also don't think this is just one bad week. I do think there are concerns about this team. They were my pick to make the Super Bowl in the AFC, and now I have some serious concerns. I am still holding out hope that, this is just a down regular season moment, that come playoff time, again, things change. When you have Josh Allen, that fixes a lot of things. But there are some pretty big flaws on this roster. The defense, I don't think is as good as it has been in the past years. They're trying to cycle through guys in their secondary, trying to survive some injuries up front. And then this offense has the formula to be good. But then you watch games like this and you realize they really don't have a lot of guys outside that can win. Dalton Kincaid is probably their best pass catcher. He goes out. So then it's Khalil Shakir, it's Keon Coleman. Both guys have moments, but if those are your top two guys, I don't care how good Josh Allen is, that is going to be a concern. And so while I am going to just chalk this up to 1 week, I want to see how they respond. There are pretty big flaws. They are really good reasons to continue to believe in this team. When they're right, they have an identity. Josh Allen, you could argue, is potentially the best player still in the league. Maybe he has a great last couple months. Maybe he wins back-to-back MVPs. And if that's the case, the Bills are still right in it. But there are a lot of flaws on this team. So disappointing team this week. I want to see how they respond, but I am getting a little concerned. That is going to wrap up week 10 in the NFL. If you liked any of this, if you want to see more, I put out NFL episodes every Tuesday, summarize the week similar to this. I also put out NBA summary episodes every Friday. If you want to recap what happened in the NBA each week. Other stuff going on, put out my shorts as well. So if you like this, if you want to see more, make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.